Well, hi, everybody. Welcome so much to our presentation today. I'm Sharon O'Brien. I'm the Community Wellness Director here at the JCC, and we are absolutely thrilled to bring you this panel that has just so much information. They're a wealth of knowledge about this really, really important topic of mental health. Each person in this panel has so much to bring to the table, and we feel like creating that connection and calm in our families. We all need that. So I'm going to introduce to you first our moderator, and then I'm going to pop off the screen and you'll have the attention of these wonderful people. But before we begin, I just want to also remind you, I think everybody's muted at this point. I'm going to ask you to keep muted until all of the panelists do their presentation. They're each going to have a short presentation, and then you can unmute to ask a question, or you can actually put them in the chat, whichever you're more comfortable with. And we'll get a chance to hopefully answer all of your questions. And I know some people sent questions ahead of time, and many of those questions I think are going to be answered during the presentations, but we have a list of those too, so we'll make sure we try to cover those as well. Also, we are going to be sending any slides to you, and we also have some handouts from some of the presenters as well, and they're going to share their information with everybody at the end. So without further ado, let's begin. So I'm going to start with Dr. Ted Iheanacho. And Dr. Iheanacho is a psychiatrist with board certification in general adult psychiatry and addiction psychiatry. He is currently the chairman of psychology and behavioral health services at Trinity Health of New England and St. Francis Hospital in particular. He is also associate professor of psychiatry at Yale University School of Medicine. And Dr. Iheanacho completed medical school in Nigeria and multiple postgraduate trainings in Dublin, Ireland, New York, and New Haven, Connecticut. Thank you for being with us, Ted.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really delighted we're having this conversation. It has been a challenging time for all of us, families, young people, everyone. It's been a tough few years. So I'm glad that we're having this conversation and having some resource around supporting families in these really challenging times. I will go ahead and I will introduce, we have five speakers today, and I will introduce all of them one by one, and then we'll start with the presentations, and then we'll have the questions. So the first is Dr. Miri Bar-Halpern. Dr. Miri Bar-Halpern is the Director of Inpatient Outpatient Treatment Services at the Boston Child Study Center, and is a trainer at McLean Hospital's Institute for Trauma-Informed Systems Change. She's also the Chief Clinical Officer at Kobe Labs, a mental health startup for teens. Dr. Bar-Halpern has been providing training and professional workshops in the United States and Israel about evidence-based treatment for emotion dysregulation and trauma to psychiatric hospitals, mental health organizations, and graduate programs. She was invited to present nationally and internationally on emotional regulation in children and has numerous publications on this topic. She is the author of the book, Becoming a Superhero, the development of a book for children who have been exposed to terrorist attacks, and the Heart Manual for children who experience trauma. So thank you so much and welcome, Dr. Halpern. The other person is Joan Harovas. Joan Harovas has been a nurse for over 50 years, receiving the Nightingale Award in 2015. She is board certified as a holistic nurse and is a certified hypnotherapist, prepared for surgery, heal faster facilitator, and a certified heart math coach stroke mentor. She creates and teaches wellness classes that are designed to help individuals incorporate self-care into their lives, as well as create safe and respectful environments. She's a partner and provider with the Holistic Health Options, LLC. Additionally, along with her family, she's the co-owner of Granny's Pie Factory in East Hartford. I like that. The next is Tracy Johnston. Tracy has enjoyed an exceptional career providing nourishment and encouragement to families and children for more than 25 years. She has taught in both public and private settings. She has been an assistant principal at the elementary and secondary levels, while also serving as the district director of pupil services. By nature, Tracy is a creative builder, always seeking improvements and fun along the way. She happens to be a certified Kripalu yoga instructor. Nice. as well as an art enthusiast who believes families that play together stay together. After a recent bout with cancer, Tracy founded Tighe Together, a nonprofit that supports families healing from various traumatic events using restorative play, loads of practice, and a team of family facilitators to guide their way. And then we have Ruth Freeman. Ruth is a licensed clinical social worker who has taught parenting education across the state of Connecticut for over 3 decades. As the founder of Peace at Home Parenting Solutions, she now works with a team of over 20 diverse expert specialists who deliver digital parenting education at MIT, CVS Health, the Lego Group, Big Brothers Big Sisters of New York City, and other organizations with a 98% overall satisfaction rate among participants. So thank you so much, our panelists. We're glad to have you. Let me start with Dr. Bar-Halpern. Do you want to go ahead and do your slide presentation?
Of course, thank you so much for having me. I'm just going to share the screen. Can everybody see my screen? Just thumbs up. Perfect. Thank you, Tracy. Okay, so this is going to be brief, but I will send this along so people will have it. But just a taste of what it's like to support parents and to support the family as a whole. So in general, what we know, the main struggles with mental health right now for, especially for teenagers and also younger kids, is related to anger, to isolation, depression, anxiety, of course, and lack of communication within the family. One way to look at it is through what we call the transactional model, which was established by PsyD. And the idea behind it is really when you look at a family dynamic and you have someone that is more, let's say, can you hear me?
You can now.
Okay. Like I said, so when you have a family system, when you have a teen or a child that is more sensory or more, we call it a super sense, or he feels stuff more, sometimes it can lead to what we call inaccurate expression of emotion. When we have an environment that doesn't, there is a mismatch in the environment and the parents cannot appropriately support the kid, or in return they just don't understand the emotion. They might react to an anger, but the kid is actually feeling sadness, for example. That could lead to invalidation and a cycle that keeps on, and this is where the arousal of the child keeps happening. So one of the things that we try to do in parent coaching is actually helping parents reduce their own emotional arousal in order to be able to understand an accurate expression of emotion and to show to the child accurate expression of emotion. So that's kind of like a big way to say this is a transaction model and we're all connected, meaning if we help the parents, we help the child and vice versa. Which brings up the point of why is it so important for parents to seek support and get some parent skill. So I'm sure all of you heard before about the metaphor when you in an airplane, you need to put an oxygen mask on you first. And there's a real reason for that. If we as parents cannot regulate ourselves, then we're not going to be able to support our children as well. So by using skills and modeling effective coping skills, you're actually teaching the child what to do and how to communicate effectively about emotion, reducing your own emotion vulnerabilities, and of course there is an important piece of asking for help when needed, so breaking the silence. I think one of the things that the last few years have taught us is that sometimes it takes a village. We all shifted to working from home, we need to be adaptable, and sometimes it's not enough, and it's really important to ask for help when it's just too much. So some of the skills that I just wanted to throw out there as a taste. One of them is mindfulness. Mindfulness is about being fully present in the moment without judging, without reacting. Mindfulness studies have shown that it improves attention, compassion, it reduces stress and anxiety, and it can really lead to emotion regulation. So an example of a mindfulness activity when you're really, really angry at your kids is looking at a picture of them when they were younger or a picture from a vacation together and just fully being that experience. Another one that I try to do is after I have 2 younger kids at home and they drive me nuts sometimes, is going to the room when they're sleeping and just looking at them sleeping and just raising compassion by doing that. So this is mindfulness. Another one is TIP skills. So TIP is an acronym for temperature, intense exercise, paced breathing, and progressive muscle relaxation. And the idea behind it is to tip, to change our body from the inside out. So for example, taking a cold shower or using ice, Taking a wet towel, put it around our face. It really, and if you're really, really upset, a really great trick is to take a bowl, put it ice in it, put some really, really cold water, and dip your head in it for 15 seconds. It actually mimic a diving reflex. For those of you who ever scuba dived, when you're underwater, your heart rate just slows down, everything just slows down. So it's kind of like a quick break from everything. Intense physical exercise, releasing some good endorphins, kind of like the good feeling hormone, running up and down the stairs, push up, all this kind of stuff. Paced breathing is really about, again, getting oxygen everywhere to the body to be able to think clearly. And then progressive muscle relaxation is the idea that sometimes we need to tense our muscles in order to feel more relaxed. I don't expect you to remember any of that, but I will send a slide with some ideas. Another few ideas is for self-soothe techniques. So just going according to the senses, it can be anything from looking at pictures that you like, listening to music, maybe smelling some fresh laundry or smells, scents that are good for you, getting some tea or chocolate, and then retouch again, hot and cold shower, favorite blanket. Now, the beauty about all of those skills is that you can do it with your kids as well. And by showing them, even saying out loud, you know what? I'm taking a break right now to take care of myself. I need to use a skill. You're teaching them that it's okay to do that as well. It's okay to pause for a second and to really listen to what you need at that moment. Validation is another important one. So validation is really the idea of finding a grain of truth in what the other person is saying and really joining their experience. I think as parents, when we become parents, the instinct to solve problems and to save our kids is being born with being a parent. And sometimes all they need is just someone to be there and to validate them. So validation is about emotions, it's about action, it's about cognition. That means sitting with them and saying, that sucks. I'm sorry this day was so lousy. Or I'm really sorry that you feel this way. That must be really difficult that someone at school made fun of you. You don't have to agree with them, by the way. Validation is not an agreement. It's just having them be part of an experience. You're joining their experience and you're joining their truth. And in the slide, you'll see I gave you kind of like a cheat sheet of different level of validation. Anything from just being present, eye contact, looking at them, all the way to how to actually respond in a validating way. And just an interesting fact, a lot of studies shows that just by validating the other person, you're reducing emotional
your
activity.
kids.
Can I just talk to you for a minute?
Yeah.
So, say just you're about to get on a call, so
Can you
Oh.
or
just finished my work
Wait,
day.
am I on?
You are.
okay. One last skill that I just want to throw out there is the think skill. So try when you have a conflict with your kid, you might want to think about a situation from your child perspective, have empathy. Don't jump to conclusion, ask for their interpretation. Notice your child without doing anything, so just being there, and then act with kindness. I think a lot of time we try to jump again to problem solving, which is not great. A few more things is having a safe space and language. One of the things that I want to offer you is Kobe, which is a way to support your teens. So Kobe is a chatbot for teens that really helps with skills, facilitating and engagement. And the idea behind it is really to find a place where you speak the same language as the teens. So under Kobe, we also offer parent support, community for parents, the idea that you're not alone. And I can talk about more about Kobe as needed if anyone is interested. Decreasing reactivity. I'm throwing so much information at you really, really fast because we only have a short amount of time, but I'm happy to talk about it more later. So the idea with decreased reactivity is when there is a conflict in the home, the first thing you want to go is let go of judgment. Use your own anger as a signal that maybe you need a break. You need to kind of like take time and use a skill. Stay mindful to the relationship. Be aware of the time of your request and when you want to have a conversation. Driving in the car and asking your kid a very emotional, loaded question is not the best idea. They have nowhere to run away other than the street. Reduce vulnerability and rebuild relationship, meaning finding really positive experiences together in order to get more than just neutral or negative experiences. So, regulate yourself, use skills, put oxygen mask on you, stay curious about the other side, don't assume, validate instead of problem solving. Remember, the timing is everything. Think about when you want to have loaded conversations. Seek support is needed. Sometimes it's not enough, and you might be doing the best that you can, and you might need more. So seek therapy, ask for a school counselor. Kobe, like I said, is another option. Just remember that there is more, and you don't have to deal with it on your own. So this is my quick kind of like few skills to give people. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Halpern. That was really, really concise and gives I like the tips around, sort of what you can do in the moment with your children. And this, I'm sure this will work with adults as well, but focus on families here. So I know people might have questions. You could, like Sharon said earlier, you can put your question in the chat. You could also raise your hand and ask, but I wanted to ask like a quick question before we go to the next for you, Dr. Halpern. So what do you do, what to do when your teenager isn't talking with you or lashing out at you, how to get them to engage with you? I mean, that's one question that I think most people will find helpful. What to do when your teenager isn't talking with you or lashing out at you, how to get them to engage?
So what we know is that when someone is at that point of arousal, when they're really, really angry to the point of lashing out, there's no learning. So they're basically working from the part of the brain that it's all emotional, the amygdala part of the brain. And we want to get them back to working with their cognitive part of the brain, from being able to slow down and think. And in order to do that, jumping into a conversation is just going to escalate it more. So the first thing that I would suggest is taking the time, have them take space, have them relax, use your own skill as needed, and then come back with some curious question. And it can be anything from, it looks like you're angry, or you just lashed out, or I perceived it as lashing out. What's going on right now? I want to have a conversation with you first. But definitely my big one is, don't hit it when it's hot. Don't go and like give consequences when they're already dysregulated. It's only going to escalate it more. And start always lead with curiosity and vulnerability.
Well, thank you. That is really helpful. As I'm listening to you, I have a 18-year-old who's going to college this year, and the past year has been mostly him, sort of keeping quiet and not talking to me much. But I thank you. That's a nice approach. So I think I want to go to, while we can have more time for more questions, we can go to the next our next panelist, Joan Harovas. Please take it away from here.
Thank you very much. It is such a pleasure to be here. So I was asked to come onto this panel because one of the things that I do in my nursing career is try to facilitate people relaxing, becoming authentically present in a way that does not require a lot of time. People are very busy, they're very stressed, there's already a lot on the plate. And ironically, being present, being authentically present, grounded, and what that really means to me anyway, is that when we are connected to ourselves in this moment, going back to what Mari said, it's being mindful, being present in this moment in time without judgment. So all of that to me has always sounded so wonderful, but how in God's name do I get there? So one of the things that we can do is use our breath. So since we are breathing anyway, we might as well use our powers for good, and it doesn't take a whole lot of time. So let's try it all together. It's hard because I can't really see everybody, but let's try it all together. And what I would like you to do is a couple of things before we do it all together. I would like you to think only about your breath. Think about breathing in and breathing out, and then we'll take it from there. So just take a moment, we're pausing, we're taking a moment now, just breathe in and breathe out. And now just notice, do you feel any different? Did your breath help you bring back to this moment in time? That choice, that pause is available to us all the time. And as Mary said, anger can be a great clue that it might be time to take that pause and make that choice. How do we choose, pause, and reflect how we're going to respond if we are caught in the middle of a reaction? So offering one thing is the breath. Another thing is constantly and consciously making a choice. And for me, it is almost constant. How do I want to feel about myself in this moment? How do I want to respond? How do I want to walk away from this interaction feeling about myself? Have I been kind? Have I been conscious? Have I done my best? When I look back on this moment, will I have any regrets? So this is a lot to practice. Starting with the breath, though, takes 1 second, and all it takes is a shift in the mindset. So we have a moment where we can choose in that moment what we want to respond to, how we want to respond. So taking one single breath is one technique. Choice, constantly choosing is another. Pausing for a moment is still another. So we can do all of this without having to take up a lot of our already busy time. And interestingly enough, practice is a very appropriate name, because the more we practice, the easier it becomes, and the more the effects last for us. So every once in a while, you take a breath, and then the next breath, and then the next breath, and pretty soon, automatically breathing easier, calmer, more present in your state of being. So thank you so much. I hope that has been helpful to you, coming away with 3 techniques: using a single breath, pausing to choose, being mindful of what we're thinking and feeling.
Well, thank you so very much. This is really a very, I like the way you put it. This is something you're already doing. You're already breathing. So being able to use something that you're already doing, so that you don't have to change a lot, just improve on what you're already doing. I like that approach. That's really nice. So just a quick follow-up question as people are, in case anybody else has any question, please raise your hand, put some question in the chat. I did want to sort of bring out a little bit more around when you, one of the questions I have here is, what in your opinion is the easiest way to maintain staying centered and grounded in the present? In addition to breathing and pausing and reflecting, what additional technique or what other suggestion would you have around sort of staying grounded and being in the present?
Oh, that is such a great question. So when I first started this practice, and believe me, I am still practicing, because I have moments when I go from, as I've said to many people, Zen calm to homicidal rage takes about 4 seconds. So one of the things that has helped me the most is to feel myself in my body. So taking that breath, but imagining that I'm deeply rooted in my body, which has been very, very helpful to me. And also making the choice to really try in that moment to find the best of my humanity. And believe me, it takes some doing, but in the end, though, I really do believe that if we can model for people the struggle, and we can model for people the victory, then somewhere it gives them permission to also be able to do the same. And the hope that that is possible for anyone that chooses to try. So just taking that breath, feeling myself in my body, and then in that moment, choosing, how do I want to respond? So that, I would have to say, has been the most effective thing for me.
And that is really nice. Thank you. Yeah. So I'm also this is just my own question. I'm wondering, in terms of timing, right? So I would imagine that it's good to practice this even when things are not necessarily chaotic, right? So maybe first thing in the morning, maybe last
Yes.
night, maybe just before lunch, something that is a little bit regular, during the day when things are not up. So you practice the Zen moment or the Zenness even when you're calm, right?
Exactly. And another great technique is at night, just before you're falling asleep, saying to yourself, every day in every way, I am better and better, and imagining what that means to you and using your fingers to count. And studies have shown that people that go to sleep in a positive state of mind seem to sleep better and wake up in a more positive state of mind. So the beauty about all of these techniques is that they have a cumulative effect. So the more you do it, the easier it becomes and the longer you can stay in that state. So yes, absolutely. When there is no chaos is a beautiful time to practice because it builds your bank account. And then you have something in your back pocket when you really need it. Thank you for that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm looking at the chat to see, there's a question from Anne. Mon says, can you please repeat the phrase?
Oh, absolutely. This is from Emile Coué many years ago, still used to this day. And it's every day in every way, I am better and better. And then imagining what that means to you. And it may be different every day. So the envisioning that and feeling what that means is very powerful.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Right. So let's go to Tracy Johnston. Take it away. Thanks.
You. I feel so fortunate to know this panel, although we've just met a few weeks ago. I think it's important to just honor and recognize in this moment that we're all benefiting and that we're all recharging and rebuilding and growing and vulnerable together. In this month of May, as mental health awareness, time seems to really be rushing by, and I'm just so grateful to have a few moments. And Joan, I really needed you. So I know this is your first time doing this, and I'm just so pumped to be with you and next to you. And although I was really wanting to be in person, I'm feeling the love and really grateful that we're able to make magic electronically. So kudos to my two teammates that have spoken already. I had some prepared things to share. I am going to speak off of them a little bit and pretty much ditch what I wrote based on what I thought was going to happen, which was Miri presenting some really exceptional slides, which was great. And so to reiterate a bunch of the things that both Miri and Joan have said, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what brings me to this panel. I happen to be a former school administrator and a teacher for 20 years. And in that role, I discovered in my first year of teaching that what I was mostly passionate about was families. Because without a strong family, the boy or girl in front of me or the student in front of me was ill-equipped to be successful. And I discovered how important, fragile, vulnerable, and undervalued families were. So I want to begin by saying thank you to the JCC and for the team, both Sharon. I just think it's so wonderful that Sharon and Jane have reached out and built this for us, because families need care. And thanks for being brave enough to offer it. And this is one way. I see my role on this panel as a person to represent some other aspects. Breathing was a theme of mine as well as a certified yoga instructor. There's several different types of breathing that we could also explore. Ujjayi breathing, fire breathing. I'd be happy to talk with you about that at another time. It's really when you create heat and space and the noise of your breath helps to center and focus you. So there's lots of ways to do that. I'm reminded, my daughter, I think, is on this call, when I was driving over the bridge to head to Newport for our summer vacation. And if anyone knows that bridge, it's quite high. And I underestimated that was going to be a little nerve-wracking for me. And so the breath that I practiced as I was gripping the steering wheel included the breathing where you take a deep breath in and your exhale is almost twice as long as your inhale would have been. And so as I pushed that air out and focused, my white knuckles started to not be white knuckles anymore. And I was at the top of the bridge, and I did it again and again. And I probably, Phoebe, I apologize because I didn't chat with you as much when I was focused in my breathing, but it was really a powerful tool. And so I think one of the gifts of our team in meeting everyone a few weeks ago was our willingness to be vulnerable and real with you. And so we practice all of the things that we're suggesting and encouraging you to pursue today. We all happen to be parents, just like you. We all happen to make mistakes. And I, for one, have won the Best Parent in Town award. Here's my version of it. I hope you find some humor in that. I can't tell you how many times I feel like I've won this, and this is sarcasm in case you're not sure. When I screwed up, misspoke, got too angry, didn't practice my Ujjayi breathing. But it's funny how when you make it into a concrete thing, you have permission to not feel so horrible and to move forward. And so this is another strategy that I wanted to offer to you, that there are so many ways to grow and move forward. In our family, I happen to be of the parents, I happen to be the parent who is the brilliant mistake maker. I've owned that role quite wonderfully. And so I decided this one, for our purposes today, would include ribbons, right? Like I'm quite hot shit there. I'm feeling pretty good about myself, and I make mistakes regularly. And I view that as part of adulting and part of real lifing. Right? It's about showing our kids, yeah, okay, let's fix it, right? Fixing is just as important as building and creating. And so I think it's important to have tangible proof and evidence that helps you to move along. Like eventually I'm going to move on and I'm not going to be in my head about whatever the thing was. And I know one of the questions that was raised and talked about your exhaustion and not feeling good enough. Well, there's two examples of ways that someone across town is feeling just like you. I think we just don't always talk about it. And so tonight's about being brave enough to do just that, to talk about it. In our work at our nonprofit that we've started a year or so ago, it's called Tied Together. We support families that are healing from really difficult things. And our whole mission is to empower families to use all of that information that Miri highlighted, that Joan suggested, and do so in playful, fun ways. And there's tons and tons of research out there about the benefits of play, the power of play, how it actually can change us. And so I'm going to read a few things because I'm not a doctor and it doesn't come that quickly to me. But Dr. Andrew Huberman is a person that we work off of quite a bit. He's a neurobiologist from Stanford University. And we believe that families that play together are families that are ultimately going to stay together longer. And what Dr. Huberman has helped us to better understand is that the more that we play, the greater the likelihood that we can actually change the makeup of our brain. So according to him, we're able to grow new neural circuits. And these neural circuits help us tremendously in so many ways. So when I say play, I'm talking about all of the adults that are on this call playing with the other adults in the family and the children in the family. We're all needing play. Play is equivalent in many ways to sleep and to thirst. The more we're deprived of those things, the more we will reach for them and the more we will want them. So keep that in mind. Play isn't just a luxury and a leisure thing. It's a requirement for a happy, content, peaceful, joyful life. And that to me, as I learned that, I've always believed that. I grew up in a family that was all about playing. My dad believed that we needed to know how to play golf, my mom and tennis, and my mom believed that we needed to ski and swim. And so you put that together and there was always something to do outside. And we were in a neighborhood that everyone was outside and that's how you played. And so I think it's really important that we as a group are always talking about ways to allow people to continue to play and to find new ways to play. Secondly, Tied Together is super focused on connectivity. And we'd like to nod an appreciative nod to Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey for their new book. It's titled What Happened to You? So there's another resource, and you see Miri nodding without me actually texting her to say, hey, can you back me on this one? Because that book has been so powerful for so many families. Again, it's a concise, beautiful conversation. The audio version is lovely. It feels like you're at a private Oprah screening. And in that book, he talks about resiliency and what makes one family or one person be able to rise above and potentially not the other. And what's the difference? And one of the key foundations for our capacity to actually be able to move forward is profoundly simple. It's in the title of the reason we got together: connectivity, connections to others. Our ability to reach through that screen, to point to the next person beside us, to say, hey, nice to see you up there or down there. That connectivity is what links us. He even talks about the capacity to know your mail carrier's name, like the people that actually are aware of their neighbors and who people are and are willing to stop and chat with people. That satisfies a portion of not only our soul, but our brains as well. And so we're here to model, encourage, and stress the importance. So if my husband happens to be on the call, I'm going to just say to him out loud, see, honey, this isn't a bad thing. The fact that I talked to the server or whomever we are greeting or bumping into, it helps me to feel empowered and understood and cared for in really special ways. Lastly, I wanted to just talk a little bit about the tinkerers of the world. And it is believed that tinkerers have an extremely strong play identity. We all have different play identities. And the great thing about them is they're plastic or they're fluid. They're sort of like this dough, right? If anyone's interested in that. It's always ever changing, and it's up to us to keep using it, to keep smushing it, to keep expanding it, to add different colors to it. And so Play-Doh is another perfect example of something that we encourage you to mix the colors and to go for it and not stay stuck in sort of one lane, which is really powerful. It's important that we as a group explore play. And so I've decided as a portion of my conversation with you that I actually wanted us to play a game. In person, we had options set up for that, but now we're going virtual. So I think Sharon's going to share a screen in a second. And the screen is a game that we often play. There are so many ways that we can play for 30 seconds and it'll change how you're feeling. So you just picking this up in the office and doing something with it, and oh, look, I just got 3. It really does matter. And the reason it matters, according to the research by the doctors and the scientists out there, is that when we're doing this, we're letting go of expectation. We're letting go of rigidity. We're letting go of things that don't soothe us and don't help us move forward. And so no one goes to bed thinking about this game, most likely, right? And how I have to get more on there and how come I only got 3 and not 6. It's really about sort of redefining. And guess what? When we're playing, suddenly we have to start all over. And learning the skills of being an effective player helps us to also be a happier and more personable employee, leader, teacher, and learner overall. So all of these play skills are exceptional. We're about to play a game called Spot It. Spot It is, again, something that could take a minute to 3 minutes to play as long as you want. We're trying to give you those quick hits. So Sharon has a screen to show you what Spot It looks like. It's a small little game that you can put in your purse or your backpack or your back pocket. These are the size of the cards, so they're quite small. They used to be, I think, a little bit bigger. And what happens is you're able to use 2 cards at a time. So no reading skills are required at all. And these images are about to be on the screen. And Sharon, go ahead and click to the next screen. When you see these images, you'll be able to identify over time, or maybe you won't, and we'll help you through, a match. So every 2 sets of cards has an identical match. They may not be the exact same size, but they will be the exact same shape and color. So does anyone want to type in the chat when they see it, what the match is here? Anchor, great job. So there's lots of ways to play this. So the next thing you would do is take away one of those cards and replace it with a new card. And then that pair will have a match as well. So we're not going to make you look at my screen and that screen. We'll just put up a new set of 2 cards. And so when you see the next set of cards, this is also a really wonderful game that can be played across generations, your preschooler, your grandparents, your spouses, your children, the teenagers. It's really intended for almost any audience. So again, check in with your body as you're trying to find the image, and feel free to, oh, somebody found it already. Sean, oh, that's my husband, you show off. Okay, so it's the dog. Well done, honey. I meant to be very encouraging in that. So we've already moved on to the next one.
Hammer.
Hammer, way to go, Ted. So let's just take a minute to talk for a second about what happened while I was talking about the power of play and the need for play, and then you actually played. Likely your heart rate changed. Likely the position in your chair changed. One could even, if you were paying attention, notice your breathing. And so there's a lot of research out there now about devices. So as parents, we're always trying to figure out screen time and where do we go with that, and the power of play. And so just a nugget of information that I've become more aware of is something called the physiological sigh. And Miri may be able to help me on this one, but it's my understanding that when we're looking at a computer screen or our phone screens, so the smaller the screen, the more restrictive our breathing becomes, and we start suppressing the natural sigh that our body does about every 5 minutes. So about every 5 minutes, we end up taking in a double inhale and then having a longer exhale, except when we're on those devices. That in turn affects our ability to have accurate reading comprehension skills, attention skills. ADHD gets recognized as a higher level when we're on screens. So it's a fascinating new thing. So in addition, when your child is asking, can we play a game? And you're thinking, oh, geez, do I have to do that? I want you to pay attention to your own body. And it's a source of self-care to play, right? It's not just for children. And we're now realizing why and how come and what it actually does for you, which when you think about it in the same category as breathing or drinking water, well, who doesn't want more of that? So we'd really love for you to consider saying yes when your child asks you to play. And now you also have more information about your breathing and how that changes when you're playing and when you're actively spending time with your family in a way that is meaningful without expectation. Like, I have no expectation about my performance when I'm looking at these things. I have no expectation about being a good parent, or it doesn't define me. This is just freedom time, right? Time to play. And so I'm super excited that as a team, we all bring so many similar things, but yet overlapping pieces that I'm hopeful you will consider, in addition to just having a pantry in your kitchen, right? That's nourishing, it has all the things you need. How about a play pantry? How about a box, if not a closet, that has all of these things? In my case, it would have spray paint in it. Like, just the noise of that spray paint changed something for some of you. Some of you were like, "Whoa, not in my house." And my kids are like, "Oh, here we go again," right? So play, just the visual expectation of it. I even had to bring water, right? I was gonna bring water. Having this nearby gives children and adults permission to let go of their expectations and to dive in an unexpected, wonderful way. So I hope some of those things were useful. If nothing else, it sort of maybe made you chuckle. And again, I'm just so honored and so proud that the JCC is working towards empowering all of us as parents, because we're all in it together.
Thank you so much, Tracy. That's really wonderful. I'm smiling from ear to ear here. It's really nice. And you basically answered one of the questions I have there, which is when you're really tired and your child wants to play, but you're tired. Well, how do you figure it out? I think reframing it around, this is also for you to rejuvenate you, to get your brain working in a different way. I think that can be helpful. I'll tell you what I used to do. I love reading, right? So my kids like to play like the physical game. So I came to a point where I'll put a compromise. Okay, so if we play for 5-10 minutes or 20 minutes or 1 hour, we read for 30 minutes or something. And so they didn't like reading that much, but they were able to say, okay, you know what, if we do this, so that's what we did. I don't know how that worked for everyone else, but that was one way for me to engage in, even when I was a little tired.
Yeah, I have another suggestion about that fatigue, because we're all in it, right? We all experience it. The yoga teacher in me used to love having my students put their feet up the wall. And when your feet are up on the wall and you're in that prone position, there's so much good that happens without any effort. So if you need to play a game, you could lay there and play it, right? You can use these cards with your feet up the wall, thus nourishing yourself and letting you have permission to just take a load off for a few minutes, but also actively speaking, sharing, challenging, laughing together. So there are multiple different yoga poses that we could also explore and go into, but I think getting in touch with your physical body and allowing yourself even just 5 minutes of that position. Tied Together is actually experiencing something tomorrow night with a family. And one of the first things that we're having them do is find a spot in the living room and put their feet up on the wall. And how funny, like as soon as you're in that position, you're like, what? I gotta do, all right, this isn't so bad. And then we hook you, right? We help you to believe in the power that your body actually has to heal itself. And I think there's more and more groups like this one tonight that really wants to empower and give tools to help us all be more successful and more confident.
Tracy, I want to come to a dinner in your house because it sounds like fun.
We call it Camp Johnston. It's anything's possible here.
And so thank you so much, Tracy. That's really wonderful. I'm looking to see if there's any questions in the chat. If there's none and nobody's raising their hands, next is Ruth Freeman. Ruth Freeman, sorry. Ruth, go ahead.
I'm trying to unmute. Thank you so much. I just want to let you all know that I teach online parenting all the time. And what I'm used to and what I really want to invite you to do is to send questions while I'm talking. The thing I love best is when parents ask questions that are hard. So please try to, challenge me. I feel so inspired by you all. I just want to say a few things in response to you all, but really, I would love if you can come up with some very specific questions about dealing with kids. And I think you're going to get the most out of all of our members if you really write what you're worried about. What's the thing that brought you here? What inspired you to be here? And what do you want most before we go? You have a panel here of folks with very different and very deep experience. So I hope that you'll use us. Don't be polite. Ask the real questions. Sharon, is it possible for people to send just questions to you so they're anonymous, or do they have to be to everybody? Okay.
Yes, they can send them just to me if they want.
Okay, so if you're not comfortable, stating your question to the whole group, you can just send it to Sharon and Sharon will just say it. We have this question. So please send questions. I want to respond to so many things you all said. I loved it. One thing I want to say, Tracy, is that I want to clarify about play, because there's playfulness. There's not just play, let's sit down and play a game or like that, but Tracy actually illustrated playfulness. And this changes the brain. I mean, I remember I was taking care of my 2-year-old granddaughter and I was changing her diaper and she was really fighting with me. And I was getting kind of firm with her. And my husband came in and said, wow, Ruth, you're being a little harsh. And I was, what I was thinking, I'm not going to say it out loud, but, and then he turned to her and started to take her nose and pretend to take her nose. She relaxed, I relaxed, everything changed. And what he did there was he was being silly. He was being playful. And playfulness actually relaxes your brain automatically. You don't have to work at it. So we're always encouraging parents to be playful. Even with teenagers, you can have like a song comparison. I'm going to tell Alexa to play my favorite song when I was 16. Now you play your favorite song when you were 16. You can have a dance party. You can put on, you can let the teen pick music for when we're going to do cleaning. You can just insert playfulness all over the place to relax the brain. It's incredibly important. And I wanted to say, Tracy, when you said, talking to everybody when, I just went out and talked to the UPS driver today. There's actually research about longevity and how long people live. And when they listed the 10 top things in this one particular research about what is associated with living longer, you would think it would be diet and exercise, and those things are in the top 10. But number 2, the second most important thing associated with longevity is close relationships. And the number 1 association with longevity is the number of social interactions you have in the course of a day. Simply going in and saying to the barista in Starbucks, I like your top, or what a cute haircut. That transaction does a lot of things, and it helps people live longer. So this, we're facing a mental health crisis. The Academy of Pediatrics, I have longevity of my future, me too. The Academy of Pediatrics has declared that we're having a mental health crisis. Kids are sitting on gurneys in emergency rooms, waiting for psychiatric treatment. Parents are overwhelmed. On top of that crisis of anxiety and depression, the Ohio State University just came out with a report that 66% of working parents are experiencing something called parental burnout. Parents are feeling that they don't want to be close to their kids. They're more anxious, they're more depressed, they're using alcohol more, and they're using more punitive, that means yelling, screaming, threatening, hitting, more punitive parenting practices at the same time as kids struggling the most. So we have a perfect storm here. And if you're feeling tired or you're feeling discouraged, it's not because you haven't done a good job. It's because you're surviving some very, very difficult circumstances right now. And one of the most important things we want parents to have is compassion for your internal experience of your life right now. Just noticing it, honoring it, saying it out loud to somebody. If you don't want to be around your kids, it's not because there's something wrong with you. It's because you're overwhelmed with the number of tasks you have to do. There's research that working mothers are doing 5 hours more of domestic tasks with the pandemic. And once again, it's falling to women, but there's certainly lots of fathers who are experiencing this as well. And we mostly want you to tune into what you're experiencing, give it some words, and there's a lot of strategies that you can use. Are there any questions in the chat? Because I want to get those challenging questions. What do you?
Yes, there is.
Okay, what do you do when parenting styles are at the opposite end of the spectrum? Is it okay if I just say them, if I see them?
Yes, please, sure.
Okay. Yes. So there's several things you can do. One is to understand that often opposite parents marry each other. So the general marries the marshmallow. The general doesn't have that softness in them, and they're drawn to the softness. And the marshmallow knows that they're not firm enough, and they're drawn to the general. So they feel like they're gonna compensate for each other. But what actually often happens, unless there's lots of communication, is that those differences get more polarized with time. The general thinks the marshmallow is too soft, so they get more firm or harsh. And the marshmallow thinks the general is too harsh, so they get more and more soft. And that polarization leads to lots of problems. So there's many things you can do. And I think you're all going to have my email address at some point, and I can send you some handouts for parents about this, because this is a very common challenge. But you can start by simply talking about what you think is the purpose of being a parent. What's my job as a parent? You might be surprised at what your partner is saying. So if you ask me, my job is to create a safe environment so my child can grow into their real self. Another parent might feel like I have to make my child safe in a
Hello.
dangerous world.
Hi.
So the first is to start talking about what your goals are as parents, and you may have to just start there and discuss that and how are we going to put these together. The other action step is to tell the other parent what you appreciate about them. Like, for example, if I were talking to my husband, I would say, I really appreciate that you're so playful with the kids. I'm terrible at that. I have trauma in my background. I'm always on alert. If you've experienced trauma as a child, your brain is on hyper alert. You're always looking for the catastrophes. You're trying to plan against the catastrophes, and playfulness is the last thing on my mind. But my husband is very easy with that. And the research is that in general, fathers tend to be more playful. I could make a lot of theories about that. But so telling that parent what you appreciate about them, the ways they contribute to your life, to the kid's life, and building the bridges first. And also talking about what are the parenting challenges that we want to get on the same page about. Just identify the difficulties and then talk about how can we get on the same page. And sometimes that's as easy as watching a parenting class together and discussing it. But we actually have at Peace at Home Parenting some very specific classes about getting on the same page. But you can just watch a class about discipline together and then talk about it, because then the expert is saying the ideas and you together can react to it versus trying to inform each other. I hope that was helpful to you. And if I didn't get to it, please ask me. I guess I just want to say a couple of other things because I'm hoping we'll have lots of questions. And that is, first of all, that your relationship with your children is the most powerful protective factor when it comes to mental health, your relationship. And I want to talk about that very specifically. When we think about teenagers, I would challenge parents of teenagers all together, but especially withdrawn teenagers. I would challenge you to refrain from all unsolicited advice. For me, I have to go out and buy duct tape. It's that serious. But teenagers are doing their identity formation. And when you're constantly, it's very hard not to, because it's your last shot. It's like, oh my God, they're going to go out in the world. I have to teach them to be polite. I have to teach them to make plans, However, during this identity formation, they've got lots of thoughts and opinions. And every time you tell them what to do, what they feel is, you don't see me as capable and competent. And that's a big problem. So I would invite you to refrain from all unsolicited advice. The other thing I would tell parents, all parents, but especially parents of teenagers, is learn who owns any given problem. And by owning a problem, what I mean is, whose responsibility is it to handle it? So there's 3 questions we ask when we think about any problem that a kid is having. Is the child too young to handle the problem? Will there be harm to a person or property? And am I being disrespected? Too young, harm, disrespect to the parent. So if your 5-year-old comes home and they're devastated because they weren't invited to their best friend's birthday party, are they too young to handle that sadness? No. Is there going to be any harm if they don't get to go to their best friend's birthday party? No. Am I being disrespected if they're not invited to their best friend's birthday party? No. This problem belongs to the child to handle. Now, once we get that parent's problem or child's problem, if the 5-year-old comes home and says the 12-year-old on the bus is bothering her, then she's too young to handle a 12-year-old. So now it's my problem. With teenagers, sometimes there's shared problems. But the important category for parents of all children, but especially parents of teenagers, is to understand that when it's the child's problem, you don't give solutions, but you can coach problem solving. And there's a few steps to that. The first and most important is one of the protective factors in mental health, and Miri referred to this, and that's reflecting their emotions. So your child comes home and says they weren't invited to a birthday party. They're devastated. They're heartbroken. They're 16 years old. They think they're going to die. And Dan Siegel in his book Brainstorm about teenagers says they need a peer group to launch. They need that peer group. When they act like they're going to die from not having a group of friends, there's a little bit of truth in it that they need it to succeed. So it's much more important to them than it ever has been. So your child hasn't been invited to the birthday party. Your first job in this process of helping them to solve the problem is to reflect their emotions to the best of your ability. You sound really upset about this. You seem really devastated. And the deal is you're doing this in a tentative fashion. You're not opening up a diagnosis and starting to take notes. You're simply saying, wow, you sound really sad. And the kid goes, no, I'm really mad. You do not correct them. You take them at face value. So you're super mad right now. Yes, I'm furious. Okay. Now she's tearing up. She's looking really sad. I think she's really sad underneath that anger. I'm not going to diagnose her, interpret her, or do anything. I'm going to reflect those emotions as she expresses them to me. She tells me she's mad. I say, so you're really mad. And you're mad because you didn't get invited. Well, I'm also mad because I didn't get invited. And now she's spending all this time with this other friend. So your second job is to understand the problem according to the child. Now, your daughter may have been just treating this friend horribly for the last 3 weeks, and you know it. She's been ignoring her friend, and she didn't get invited to the party. But you are not interpreting the problem nor her emotions. So you're super mad because she's hanging around with this other person, and you didn't get invited. Yes. So you wait until the kid affirms your interpretation. So step one is just reflecting the emotion, which builds emotional intelligence and strengthens your connection with the kid. They're feeling seen by you, which is super important. And you're reflecting the problem as they present it without interpretation. Is this making sense so far? So the third step is, do you have any ideas about how to handle this? So you're going to invite the child to come up with some ideas. If you've been solving their problems all their lives, they won't have any. So you can say, well, why don't you think about it and let's talk about it after dinner? Or ask one of your friends for some ideas. Try not to give them solutions. So let's say they come up with something. I could steal her homework. I could write something on her locker. So they come up with ideas you don't like. You just listen. So you could steal her homework, you could write something on her locker, whatever it is. Then you invite them to think about each idea. What's going to happen if you steal her homework? What's going to happen if you write on her locker? They talk about the outcomes, and then you say, which of those do you want to choose? They say, well, neither one really works. Let's try something else. If they say, I'm going to write on her locker, you're going to say, that isn't really legal. I don't really support that. Let's come up with something else. But you're not having any opinions about their ideas until they choose one, if it's inappropriate. If it's not the best idea, but it's not a problem, you're going to let them do it and say, let's talk about that another time. Teenagers who believe that they are problem solvers, who perceive that they are problem solvers, are much safer during adolescence. Otherwise, if you're solving their problems all the time, their friends will be solving their problems, and that's a throw of the dice. So I just want to encourage you to be open and curious about your kids and understand that your relationship showing up in these ways is really helpful. What do you do when the stress, anxiety of
Can I
one
just add
child?
something, Ruth?
Sorry?
I just wanted to add something.
Yeah.
About connecting with teenagers and older children. And my daughter was so brave the other day in that she asked us to play this new game, and it was an app on our phones. So at dinner, we all jumped on and used the app and played this new game. And I think the forms and shapes and appearances of play is ever evolving. And those connection points are powerful and great ways to communicate, to hear, to learn, to listen. And one thing that is, I think, a little underrepresented on our panel tonight is just all of the outside time, like forcing us as parents to go outside, forcing us to actually say, no, this is what we're doing. And I just, the skier in me wants to put that out there, and there's something to be said for that nature bath or nature shower, right? And those moments are also, I think, addressing some of our own health crises and our own vulnerabilities. And I'm so sympathetic to reading the comments that were afforded to us before we got on tonight, because one of the themes that is just pervasive is how fragile we as parents are feeling. And I don't say you, meaning the audience, I say that collectively we. My husband and I, all of us, we're all right there at the edge. And so if your children have suggestions or are doing something on their phone and you think they're not engaging, to actually see what's on that screen. It happened to be this game, and so we all played. And so there might be a really nice entry point there to stay open-minded too. Thank you for letting me get that out.
Tracy, I love that. I think I don't know if I was clear when I was talking about the Kobe, for example, because one of the things we did very intentionally is making sure that we're sitting where teens are to invite parents to that space. So I don't know about you, I feel really old sometimes when I work with teens. They keep correcting me, you can't say rat anymore, you can't say dove. So I feel very old, but then getting into their world, I didn't even know what's Discord, for example, when I started. And so for those of you who don't know, Discord is a gaming platform. It's completely far away from me, like completely far away. Something about inviting the parents to understand what it is opens a bridge to communication. So showing real interest to what your kid is doing is key, but be genuine. Don't fake it. They'll know. They're smart. They're going to know when you're faking. Finding a grain of truth, finding something you can connect to and show real interest in what it is, have them explain to you. That's one of the ways to build this bridge of connection.
You know, I think we should, I want to, you're all talking about things that are actually related to the question that came up about what do we do about one child in the family's anxiety and stress affecting everybody. And I think that playfulness actually is an antidote to that. But, and we probably all have some perspectives on this question, but from my point of view, when I think about that, I would have to, it would be great if that parent would send us some examples of how that happens. But when I think about that, one thing you can do is you can have a family meeting. You can sit down and say, it seems like John's distress is affecting all of us, and John really needs support. So let's think about how we can handle this. How can we support John in his difficulties right now? And how can we all stay calm when he needs us? And how can we all stay calm when he's in distress? So, and I want to recommend a book to you all, because I'm sure we have lots of parents here with concerns about anxiety and stress. Mona Delahooke, Delahooke, wrote a book for practitioners called Beyond Behaviors. She's a psychologist that integrates neuroscience into parenting. And she just wrote a new book called The Brain Body Parenting. And what Delahooke says is that each child has a unique way of recentering. And many of us as parents try to use the things that help us. So for one child, it might be space. For another child, it might be contact or a lot of contact. For another child, it might be noise. It might be like putting on music. For another child, it might be absolute silence. So part of our challenge when we're thinking about the child who's stressed out and making everyone anxious is to really be curious for each of our children and ourselves, what calms us down. So if we have a child who has explosive events, we as a family have to plan, like mom might be able to go towards that and sit quietly, but younger sister might have to be in a different room. Like we can work together as a family to come up with strategies that will be helpful. And I assume other people have other ideas for that question.
Yeah, just to add to that, Ruth, back to the idea of our sort of play cupboard or pantry. One of the things that was really important for me as a parent, because it soothed me, was having whiteboards. We had a set of mini whiteboards. And so if we had a family meeting, everyone would get a whiteboard, and we were able to have permission to write whatever the things were that were on there. That can be another easy way. You can erase it and it's gone and there's no evidence, but it was another way of engaging and communicating with each other without anyone having to feel any tension and without having to point fingers at anything. And so I'm encouraging you all to consider what's next to your pantry that is going to help you, because that's how often you're going to be using these practice items, right? And so I agreed with Ruth about the need for a family meeting, but other ways to promote sharing, whether it's journals, whether there's a game or an activity, or I wish we could do this when that happens. Having everyone answer that one question will then also give you information about how to proceed as a parent. And one last thing about the family meeting, to be sure that you wrap that up in a positive, complimentary way so that the family is feeling empowered for their efforts. No one wants to walk away from a family meeting feeling depleted.
Yeah, well, if you email us, we'll be happy to send you a handout on different formats for family meetings. Yeah.
I have just a quick thought and actually a question more than anything. And this is really for me, and I don't know what other parents here think about it. So one of the sources of anxiety for me, and I'm also learning more and more for the young kids, is some of the things that are happening in the news, like the shooting in Buffalo, New York, and some of the sort of egregious sort of political discussions. I've come to realize that the kids are more in tune with these things than I thought. And I really struggle with what to do and how to sort of, I don't know what other people's experiences are. How do you address topical issues like that with young people, right? What's the best way for the most part, I've ignored it, actually, which I don't think is a good idea. What do people do?
We just put something together about this because that, for some reason, that event, I don't know why, but it just, I don't know. But anyway, one way to start is to ask kids, what are you hearing about this? And starting with where they are. So what have you heard about this? And what are your friends saying about it? Sometimes kids will be more forthcoming about what their friends are saying, and that's really what they're thinking. But it's harder if you say, how do you feel about this? That's too straight on, too invasive. So what are your friends saying? And then are you feeling similarly as your friends or different? And being willing to be a learner with the child, and with these events in particular, asking them what their thoughts are about it as you circle around this, what are your friends saying, and blah, blah, blah. And then always trying to wrap these up with, here's some things that are being done to address this. Here's some things that have been helpful to people. And here's some actions that are happening. And parents recognizing that we are all learners in this. None of us have walked this walk exactly, because there's so much going on at the same time, So saying, let's look together for something we can do that makes a difference. And also talking to librarians in the schools or in your local library about books you can read together, even with teenagers. You can read them parallel and discuss them, or sort of bibliotherapy books for young children to talk about racism, to talk about violence, and doing it at their developmental stages. So reading those books together is another way to have those conversations.
I completely agree. The only thing I would add on that is monitoring the exposure. So not hiding it, but being able to have an appropriate conversation. I think right now, when there's so much stimulus out there and there is absolutely no monitoring on social media, and everything is out. So from trauma-informed lens, I would say, if you're going to watch something with the kids, make sure it's appropriate, and look to what they're watching as well. And like Ruth was saying, having an open discussion and not hiding it. I think that information is power, knowledge is power. So empower the kids as well.
And in addition, I would suggest having that conversation potentially while your hands are busy, right? And so doing a drip painting, this requires no artistic skill. However, I think it's spectacular, right? one of our kids made it the first day of the pandemic. So when the world shut down and people were at the grocery store, we were at the art store, right? So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
making space and room for kids to be able to communicate when they're in their comfort space. And that is really as well, I think, super powerful and super important to recognize that, you know, one of us said earlier, everyone has a different way. And for us to acknowledge, and, you know, one day we're going to try it this way, one day we're going to do it that way. It models for everyone in the family that they're equally valued and the family system is recognized.
And, you know, I would add to that, Bruce Perry talks about when you look in someone's eyes, just looking in someone's eyes. And I've talked to him a few times, but I forgot to ask him this question. When you look in someone's eyes, you literally lower the stress hormones in the brain.
Yeah.
The cortisol, the adrenaline goes down, and the feel-good neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, the things we take antidepressants for, go up. And Bruce, he declares that the tremendous amounts of anxiety and depression are from parents and children not looking at each other enough and not being face to face at meal times and sharing times. And, you know, he talked about this research he did at a community mental health clinic, and they were trying to look at the cases where kids improved and the cases where they didn't. And he was looking and looking, and they couldn't find the therapy style, the age of the therapist, the gender of the therapist. He was looking for every factor. And finally, he said at 2 o'clock in the morning, he threw in zip codes. And he said, did the zip code matter where the kid came from? And what he discovered was that the farther away the zip code was, the more likely the therapy was helpful. And what he concluded from that was that the kids were in the car with their parents or caregivers on the way to therapy and on the way home from therapy for a longer time. They were forced to be together. And that connectedness, he hypothesizes, was the key. And it just captures the power of parent relationship and the child.
And I just want to build on that too, Ruth and Tracy and Miri and Tad, that I think that we can be physically there, and it's so important to be authentically, emotionally present as well. We've all been in a room where the lights are on and nobody's home talking to somebody, and we can feel that absence, that emotional absence. And so I think it's really important that if we are going to engage with our kids, regardless of their age, that we be absolutely open, trying to be curious without judgment, and to really make an effort to listen, not really try and think about the next thing that we have to offer them, but to really sit with ourselves in a quiet space almost, so that we can open-heartedly listen to what they have to say. I really do believe that people feel that connectivity in that way, and that it really models and demonstrates a willingness to be open to whatever has to be shared. And I think that that goes a long way too.
You're talking about presence, and someone just asked the question about what if I walk into conflict?
Yes, I was going to read that. We only have time for 2 questions. The first one here is, how do you de-escalate an emotional, angry situation you are walking into without taking sides or offending a spouse or child?
I'm just going to say a couple of things, but I'm sure Miri has something for this. But the first thing I want to say is that attachment, Dan Siegel describes attachment as a child feeling seen, safe, soothed, and secure. So when we think about interventions, we think, how can I help my child feel seen, safe, soothed, and secure? So when that person walks into a conflict, it's bringing what Joan's describing as presence. I'm going to be the witness. I'm going to be here. I'm going to feel my love for both of you, and I'm going to feel my pain about what's going on right now. We have to experience what's happening and let them know we see them to the best of our ability. It looks like you two are at a big standoff, and you're talking really, really loud, and you're yelling at each other. That's what I'm seeing right now. And sometimes it's just being there. It's not taking sides, it's not fixing it, but it's bringing your presence to it.
I think, Ruth, what you're describing is the essence of validation, being able to see the other side and really understand it. And I think, not taking side and actually declare it, saying, I'm not going to take sides. I love you both. And just trying to really reduce the emotional arousal by just reflecting back and reminding them we love each other, we're a family, it's okay to be angry, and just lean into what can we do right now to just take space and reduce the anger. Going
But
back to,
go ahead. Well, the thing I was going to say, Miri, is that we have mirror neurons. And most of us, when we walk into a room where two people we love are yelling at each other, our brain goes into that emotional part. And unless you have a brain calming practice like Joan described, and each of us has to have our own, but unless you have a brain calming practice that you do 5 minutes a day or 3 minutes a day, that you're a black belt at, and you can call on it under fire, you're going to get activated too. You're going to start raising your voice. It's biology.
and you want to acknowledge that, right? So you want to be able to say something like, I'm being triggered right now, or I'm noticing that this is really affecting me right now. I'm not angry at you, but this is my emotional reaction right now.
So last year,
Yeah.
I got a different survey, and I was shocked because a lot of the.
Oh, I thought that was a question coming in. Okay, so I have this one last but very specific question here, which I think I really want to ask. Many parents are struggling with their school-age children refusing to go to school in the morning. Do you, Ruth, this question, do you have any suggestions about how to deal with that issue?
Yes, please email me. I have a video to send you. It's called School Refusal. It's a very specific challenge that's going on all over the place right now. And what the psychologist that we're meeting with about this issue recommends is that this is a team approach. It has to be the parent, the school, and the child together. The parent should not try to fix this on their own. They really have to engage with the school. So you meet together to talk about it. You have to understand that under school refusal is some unique pain or difficulty for this child that's very real. Parents get all activated up in giving them rewards or trying to convince them or frighten them, but they're not getting to the core issue, which is unique to each kid. We have to find out what's under it. And that might be therapy. It might be a trusted other, not parents, maybe someone else that they trust to just, and there's ways of having these dialogues. But the child also ideally would have a safe person in the school that they feel okay with. It could be a guidance counselor, a school nurse, it could be the dean, whatever, who greets them at the door when they arrive, if possible, and connects with them before they go into their classes, and that they have permission to reach out to that person during the day. These are some examples of the kinds of plans that a team can come up with, but parents really can't solve this. And the thing is, the longer you let it go on, the worse it gets. So you're trying to do this quickly and not think that you have to come up with the magic formula to get your kid to school. This is a complex issue and it takes a team.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's really wonderful. So we have 4 minutes left. Sean, I will bounce it back to you for final comments and then an closure. Thank you so much. Wonderful presentation, very lovely discussion. I've learned a lot myself. Thank you.
We lost Sharon.
Yeah, here I am. Sorry. Oh, well, I just wanted to thank you all as well. I think that was fantastic. I'm hoping we answered everybody's questions. We do have another minute if anyone just wants to unmute and ask one more thing. But, you know, I feel like we tried to answer everything that people sent to us. And I feel like this panel for me has been very helpful too. I have older young adults. And I have to say that all of these strategies are so important in, again, with that connection. And I think that's something we're all trying to get more and more. So I wish everybody well. And I will send out the slides and all the resources that we have from this extraordinary panel. And I just want to thank everybody again for coming and being here with us. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
You got it, everybody. Let's get busy.
Lots of great people are saying thank you all over the place. So
Yes,
I'm going to
yes, yes.
Thank you.
stop the recording.